Welcome to the Dean Blechman Show, live from Long Island. Free-flowing talk with a charismatic, down-to-earth host. Join Dean as he interviews and chats freely with his guests, ranging from superstar athletes to politicians, industry titans, and everyday folk with fascinating life stories. Dean educates, entertains, and most of all, touches people's lives. You're listening to the Dean Blechman Show, live from Long Island.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Dean Blechman Show. This is your host, Dean. Good morning, everybody. Scott, we have in the studio senior correspondents Scott Morrell, Anthony Lacauzi, and going across to the UK, Rhea Bowe. Scott, how are you today?
My experiences have been bizarre and challenging.
Anthony, how you doing today?
I'm good. It's never a dull moment here.
Never a dull moment. Let's go over to Rhea. Rhea, how you doing today, Rhea?
Hi, guys. Hi, Dean. I'm very good, thank you.
Rhea, we're having a beautiful, little cold fall morning today, but as I've said on the previous show, just some of the most spectacular scenery, especially Scott, I don't know, coming in from Long Island City. I mean, I don't know if you came up Nichols Road, but even that drive up Nichols Road to the studio here, my house, I think the trees are the most beautiful in the country when it gets to be this time of year. It's just spectacular.
Yeah.
Rhea, how's the weather in the UK?
We're good. We're sunny. The autumn winds haven't really arrived yet, which is they're a good probably a month late. Yeah, we've got the same with the trees, beautiful colours. We're running at 76 Fahrenheit and not much wind yet. So still lovely here, Dean.
Well, back in April when I met my good friend and colleague, Rhea Bowe, I'll never forget back in April as I decided to have a radio show. Obviously, speaking on a radio show is very different than every day for 2 or 3 hours speaking to people at my local Starbucks. And the advice that Rhea always gave me from the day I met her on was, Dean, keep it real and full transparency. And that's what we're going to do this morning. That, it's been quite an experience launching this show. Obviously, every day I've got to be involved with planning the show, producing, scheduling, coordinating, all those things. And obviously, I don't have a personal assistant until this morning. Sharon, my wife, helped out, as you know, Scott.
Yep.
But Rhea always said, keep things real with the audience and full transparency.
Yeah,
I'm gonna do that this morning.
Yeah, but I'm not understanding you wearing a hoodie and a mask today. So what's that about?
Midlife crisis.
Midlife crisis. But Scott, I love doing the show, and the three of you have become not only a integral part of the show, but my best friends. And I'm really getting to know more and more of each one of you individually.
Rhea shed a tear.
And I didn't know that I'd be so involved, even though we're a group of 4 people, that I didn't, compared to the hundreds and thousands of people that I used to manage the old days with my old job, that I'm really back again experiencing and managing people. And I just have to go back to Friday, Scott, when we had a phone call on Friday, and I was very concerned about you through the weekend. You were having a real crisis and a real physical and emotional breakdown over your Apple computer. Breaking, not working anymore.
I wasn't able to laugh like Rhea was.
Well, I let me go over to Anthony here, and after we spoke, I reached out to Anthony because he's the technical whiz, and when I told him that your Apple, is it a Mac?
iMac, yes.
iMac crashed, not working at all, and you were hysterical, having a crisis. I mean, the Apple was telling you to schlep it into New York City and go to World Trade Center or something, a location
Columbus
there.
Circle twice.
Next thing I know, you're getting on the road, and this is a huge computer that you're carrying. I mean, I think you told me the other day, it's so huge, you're getting tired of carrying it. It's starting to give you cuts and bleeding wounds from schlepping it in all over. That you ended up going to Miracle Mile in Manhasset.
That's right.
Making that drive all the way there.
Because the parking lot was closer to the store.
But I called our dear friend right here, our colleague Anthony, and his immediate reaction is, I mean, I'll let him speak further on this, but his immediate reaction was, Apple computers do not crash. That Scott has to be indulging in porn.
But come on, how many people do indulge in porn on Apple, and why did it happen to me? Am I the only one who indulges in porn, Anthony? Is that what you're suggesting?
No, not at all.
Okay, thanks. I have my own theories, by the way.
Let's go over to Rhea. Rhea, before I go on to the next thing, do you have anything else, this story that you want to talk about? The phone call that I had from Scott regarding his Apple Mac.
I'm just sitting here thinking, well, because Anthony, obviously you guys are Apple Mac people and stuff, and Anthony and Scott are sort of big Apple things. I'm thinking, for that to crash, Scott, that must have been a very, very seedy site that you went on.
Yes, and let me tell you, I want to have full disclosure now, okay? This is full disclosure. I downloaded a picture of Donald Trump, and it was incompatible with Mac, and it just said, what the hell is this? And then it just crashed. Now you can understand that. That was the CD site.
Anthony, do you have anything that you want to say further on this, other than what you told me that Scott must be looking at porn?
No, Diana swears that Macs can crash too, but I never had. I had my original Mac for maybe like 7 or 8 years, never crashed, and I just heard that they can't get. Maybe they can crash. I heard they can't get viruses, so I guess it's different. It can crash, but they can't get viruses.
And they're trying to figure out. And I'm up to the highest engineer right now, and the top people at Apple are working on it. And it was an update, and it's still still crashing.
It shows you too, if they're having an issue, it shows you that it's not very common with Apple products, because otherwise they would know, oh, okay, do this and that, and figure it out right away. So it shows you,
right? They don't know what they're doing. They said this is new; they've never seen it before. I was honored to be the new virus.
So I want to get something else out of the way. We were supposed to start this show about a half hour ago, and like every single show before it gets to be start time, I'm upstairs doing a little preparation, and next thing you know, I'm looking at my cell phone, and the name Scott Morell appears. And as I have on as we get close to the show. Now, keep in mind that I always tell Scott I'm really in shutdown mode an hour before showtime. Like, I like to just ventilate, get ready, get myself prepared a little bit, and I don't take any phone calls. But I saw him calling me, so I was very concerned that something happened on the road. But I must have spent maybe 10 seconds with Scott. I didn't hear one word really he was saying, except he needs to put his car in my garage, which
hasn't happened in 28 years.
And I needed to get back to getting prepared for the show. He before I could hang up, he's saying, Dean, even if it's just halfway, because we have a 2-car garage here, okay, and obviously I already get picked on every day for the last 9 years, because one side of that garage occupies my 2007 black GTC Bentley convertible that only has about 20,000 miles on it, maybe 2,000 a year. So Sharon, right away, when I said about Scott, she goes, why don't you take your Bentley out of the garage? Why is it got to be my side of the garage? So I told Scott when he gets here, never have I let anyone pull their car in Sharon's side of the garage. The only time that side of the garage gets used is Anthony walking through it to come into the show. And, we keep water bottles and all kinds of things, the garbage pails, everything. That the only time I've got to clean up that side of the garage is when we know that a major snowstorm is coming, that Sharon wants to pull her Audi into the garage. So here's Scott calling hysterically. He's got to get his car into our garage. I got to start. It's showtime. We've got Rhea on hold. Anthony still hasn't showed up. He's late a little bit. And I've got Scott that needs to get into the studio's garage. So Sharon and I start clearing out. He starts telling us the whys. He's got to get into the garage. And it took 10 minutes to even get him to pull into the garage because he wasn't going in straight.
Thank you.
So, Scott, what was the urgency and the problem with, if you could just share with Rhea wants to know, and obviously the audience would want to hear, what was the major problem with the urgency with the car? Something with the trunk.
Yeah, I'm glad the whole audience is seeing my dysfunction this morning. I think we should. I think we got to rename the show. Let's dump on Scott's show today. It's really quite embarrassing, actually. I had a very important, file box that I loaded in my car in Long Island City. Now my car is in a warm garage, and that'll be pertinent in a moment. I'm driving out to Dean, and it's 44 degrees. And halfway there, I have to stop at my attorney's office to pick up another box. So I pick up the box, and then I tried to open up the trunk. It doesn't open up. Freaking out because I have a 3 o'clock appointment at my accountant's. I only have 50% of my boxes. So then I told Dean I have to go into the back of his garage. He couldn't understand the concept of that. I just need the back 1/3 so my garage, my trunk stays warm. That sounds bizarre. It's like your ass being warm. I mean, what is that about? Only the front part, the back part. I mean, come on. So I finally pull in all the way, and I proceed to tell Sharon and Dean that there's a quirk with my car that during the summertime, during the warm weather, it opens up fine, but during the cold, starting last year, it didn't open up for some reason. And what I did to alleviate that is I put it in my old house, which had an indoor garage. Of course, today was the first cold day. I'm not thinking about it. I have my service tomorrow planned. And of all days, today is cold. And of all days, I have to see my accountant, and I can't open up this trunk. So Sharon's running all over the place. She knows an Audi dealer and trying to make an appointment. And the Audi dealer suggests, does the back seat fold down? And I said yes. And believe it or not, I just opened up the back seat, pulled out that box, feel much better right now. And tomorrow when I go to Brooklyn, whatever the ghost is in that and whatever the ghost is in Mac, hopefully... Rhea, do you do any witchcraft out there? Because I need a spell.
I've already done it, darling.
Thank you.
Hey, Rhea, it's a good. First of all, we've got our PA, I guess, Sharon Blechman, a personal assistant. She was a great help today. But thank God Scott has arrived now in her life because I don't have to hear, to me, always her saying, boy, you got problems. Now every time it's, boy, that Scott has a lot of problems, a lot of issues.
What a lovely morning this is.
But also why she got through to Audi service immediately. Not only are we great customers of Audi, and that's the car that Sharon loves, but if you go online to Audi of Smithtown, Long Island, New York, that I'm the face of one of the faces of Audi. That they have an ad with me in front of a couple of Audis and promoting the new Dean Blechman show. If you go online on the internet to Audi of Smithtown, you'll see a picture of me in front of Audis.
I'm a little disappointed because I thought with your stature, they would have named a wing the Dean Blechman wing. So that's half impressive.
Okay, so all I know is moving on. Sharon and I had a great weekend after I got through with Scott on Friday with his Apple problems. We got on the road and still continued about Scott and his Apple problems. But we went into the city this weekend to celebrate our 35th wedding anniversary.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much. 35 years to the same one. And we pull up to the hotel in New York. We get checked in, and listen to this story. We get up to the suite, and Sharon, as she normally does, takes off her shoes, goes to put socks on. That's her, what she does. And then next thing I hear her yelling, Dean, Dean. You know the way she yells? You know the way Sharon yells, right? Dean, Dean. Next thing you know, she says the carpeting is soaking wet throughout the suite.
What kind of hotels do you go into?
So, I'm not going to say the name of the hotel, but it was a top hotel.
Okay.
It was a top hotel in the city.
Okay.
And we frequently stay there. But I call up the manager of the hotel, the front desk, and they think we're crazy. Next thing you know, Sunday comes. Next thing you know, the hotel manager, and housekeeping whole team came up, and they say to us that the reason that the carpeting was soaked is they said the night before, on Friday night, there was a huge party upstairs above us, and I guess water was coming through down to our suite. Yeah, there was a huge party, and on 2 floors above us, and then security came, and they said, "Listen, someone from that party said they think they dropped their cell phone on your balcony." Next thing you know, I open up the balcony door. There's this cell phone that's on the balcony of our room, of our suite.
Wow.
And it's freezing, wasn't broken, and I'm returning that to security. But just a great welcome into the hotel. Rhea, I don't know if you've ever experienced that before, wet carpeting like that in a top-notch hotel that you check into.
No, but I've been part of the party that probably caused the problem.
Scott, have you ever experienced that?
No, I don't have your issues.
Okay.
And by the way, I just noticed something amongst us. When you go to Rhea, your voice gets a little bit louder. She's in London, but you don't have to do that. Okay. I just want you to know where we have technology today.
But I always feel like I have to scream, right?
Yeah, but when you speak to me, it's a normal level. Okay. Oh, Rhea, we're going to go to you over the pond.
You've got some pushback, Dean.
After that with family, we had a great brunch. Scott, have you ever been to the Standard restaurant? Great brunch, really great. That night, I think these friends that we went to. We got together for dinner with J-Lo. Really, some good friends. And what happens is, the guys, when we walk into the restaurant, it was a restaurant called Lure, Lure in Manhattan. So what happens all the time is when we go out with couples, it's always Sharon and the other woman that go to the front desk, the maitre d', and say, reservation for so-and-so. So J-Lo gives her name and says, reservation for 8:30. Sharon goes, "What are you talking about? I made the reservation for 8:30. Next thing you know, the 2 friends are arguing in front of the maitre d'. And eventually the maitre d' says, okay, after that feud, now who made the reservation? J-Lo said that she thought Sharon's text said, make the reservation. Sharon said, my text said, I'm making the reservation. So then what had to be decided was who was going to get the reservation credit on Open Table.
Oh, God. Wow.
So this is our anniversary. Huh? Sometimes it could be tough getting together with friends. As much as we love them, it could be a challenge. I don't. Rhea, do you know what Open Table is?
Yeah, you can just rock up and go, can't you?
Yeah, that's correct. So you make reservations through Open Table, and you could earn points and money through Open Table. So Sharon was kind enough; she gave J-Lo. So she gave J-Lo the Open Table.
So the stress this week, Sharon was stressing out whether or not she would have points on Open Table, and I have a crashed Mac and a trunk that doesn't open with valuable files.
So Sunday we saw, first of all, Scott, if you've never been to the Standard Grill and Cook Shop, a great place for brunch. Sunday was a great show that we saw, a matinee. Have you seen Kinky Boots?
No.
What a great show.
Oh, no, I have seen it a few years. Has it been out a few years?
Yeah, Hershey
I have seen
Theater.
It. It's great.
Really great show. Really super show. Sunday night, we got to dinner at a restaurant with our children called Osteria Morini. What a great restaurant. I'm right now, up to this point of the weekend, I'm up to about 50,000 calories. Okay, but just a great dinner with Jared and Allison. We were minus We were minus Jared's bride, my lovely daughter-in-law, Alexa Rose. She had to go to a cousin's engagement party. So what I always say when that happens, when I'm with Jared and Allison, we're back to the original four. That's the way I look at it. So to top it off, as you all know, and as you look at the show's Instagram page and you look at Facebook, to top it off, a good friend of Jared and Alexa's, going way back, is one of the owners of Joe's Pizza, an old traditional pizza house. And it goes back like 50 years and tremendous history. So we've been always asked anytime we're coming to New York, we've got to try Joe's Pizza. And we finally made it a point to get to Joe's Pizza 11:30 a.m. in the morning. I mean, Sharon hasn't eaten pizza in 4 years. It's off her diet. And to finish off the weekend like that with pizza, the best in New York, best I've ever had, the original slice at Joe's Pizza down in Union Square, unbelievable. Great history. Every celebrity imaginable's been through there over the last 50 years. I mean, they've got 14 kids every day that are driving bikes, making deliveries of pizza all over the city. Wow. It's just amazing. So the owner, Sal Vital, he's going to be a featured guest here on the show. And what tradition there's going to be about the discussion on how Joe's Pizza started and so much that goes. Scott, if you remember, when it comes to pizza, it's almost like bagels and Chinese food. You know, like everybody's got their best pizza parlor.
Well,
everyone's got their best Chinese.
Yeah, but that's known in New York.
Yeah,
those three
bagels.
items. Yeah.
So
I believe it's part of the water system also. I'm not quite sure about the Chinese, but water really changes it for bagels and pizza.
But whatever the case, Rhea, do you like pizza?
I love pizza.
Wow, when you come to New York, I've got to take you to Joe's. And when Sal's here on the show, we're going to have quite a bit of deliveries of pizza that are going to be brought here right in the studio. But just a great weekend, and a lot of things going on in the world today. You know, the first thing that I've got to mention that's top of mind is the World Series. I mean, just
great way to start.
I mean, I think
let's keep Rhea out of this conversation. So now it's only the three of us.
Well, listen, we know that Scott, that Rhea and Anthony are not huge sports buffs and sports fans, but you know, I am. And even if you're not a sports fan, would you agree with me that probably outside of politics, that the number one story in America right now is this World Series, and especially the Chicago Cubs?
No doubt, because of the two teams.
Major story. Just unbelievable. Did you watch last night's game?
In between Mac crises, I turned my head, but I was dealing with the Mac, unfortunately.
Yeah, Rhea and Anthony, there's such great history here to the Chicago Cubs. I mean, they haven't been in a World Series.
They haven't won since 108 years ago, before the Model T.
71 years they have not been in the World Series, and they haven't won a World Series for about 108 years.
Exactly right.
Okay, but did you know all about the Billy Goat, the curse?
Yes, of course. And there was a black cat also. There's a few curses.
There was a someone by the name of Mark Cianis, that came to a playoff game, World Series. It was either a playoff game or World Series that he came to the game, and the owner of the Chicago Cubs at that time, Philip Wrigley, Cianis came to the game. He got 2 tickets, and one of the tickets was a goat that he brought to the stadium. And this goat, he'd walk around the stadium, and it would smell, and people complained. And ever since Wrigley had Billy Cianis kicked out of Wrigley Field for that game, fans throughout Chicago feel that is the curse of the Billy Goat. Why the Cubs have had so many years of losing and angst and not getting to the World Series or winning a World Series.
Do you think that's rational thinking?
I don't think that's rational
Okay.
thinking. I don't think it's rational. I still look at the most difficult loss that they ever had was, if you remember, 2003.
Yeah, where the kid grabbed the ball out of right field.
Steve Bartman.
Yes.
Steve Bartman was a fan. Moises Alou came running for the foul ball in left field line, reaches with his glove. Next thing you know, Bartman reached over, was never called interference.
That's
it was
right.
in fans' way. And it was, I think it was Game 5, National League Classic Series against the Marlins.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there was, the next thing you know, after that,
Everything went downhill.
everything fell apart
Yes.
for the Cubs, and they ended up losing. And from what I hear, it sounds like Bartman is going to stay away from the World Series
Yes,
in Chicago.
they'll pay him $1,000.
So,
yeah, the seats are going just as much as the Super Bowl. I don't know if you're aware of that, Dean.
big numbers. I'm hearing through brokers that all records are being broken.
The least expensive seat in the worst place at Wrigley Field is going for $750. The worst seat, it's going up to like $10,000 for a great seat. It's unbelievable. That's the one that's going to be at Wrigley Field, not at Cleveland Stadium.
Wow.
So, just a great classic series, and I think it's the biggest news that's capturing here in the States. You know what came up also that I find, I never did Facebook until the show. Do you guys find that that a lot of people on Facebook during this political time, that a lot of people are writing on Facebook that they don't normally write about politics and their past views, but then they do it. They share it with everybody. I just can't believe that you see that a lot. Do you notice that?
I only go on to promote and help you with the show, so I don't really,
And I really don't go. I used to go on, but not anymore that much.
Okay. Scott, for Cleveland, I'm also pulling for them. It's been a long time since they've been in the World Series.
Yes.
And what would be a great thing also for them is that in surprising fashion, LeBron James and the Cleveland Cavaliers
That would be
won an
what a
NBA
year.
championship last
Yeah.
year against the Warriors, the Golden State Warriors, that great team as well. And this could be, you could have an NBA championship and a Major League Baseball World Series champ in the same city back to back.
Two things I'd like to say about it. I like to continue a bad losing streak. I mean, there is a rivalry between New York and what we normally call the second city. And so 109 years would be fine with me because they're in the National League. But you might not be aware, but there's politics to play in this. Hillary Clinton, from what I heard, was always a Cub fan, and you saw her in a Cub hat. But right after 9/11, she was wearing a Yankee cap. So is she just playing politics, or what is her true position? And it goes, I guess, with the narrative. Is she transparent? It's kind of interesting.
She's a Raiders fan.
So other than that, a great weekend of college football. Michigan beating Illinois.
Yeah, that's the only sport
Go Blue.
I don't follow.
Yeah, well, I don't miss a Michigan Wolverine.
I know the reason. Yeah,
game that I'll never forget. Those 4 years as a parent to be able to go to Ann Arbor, Michigan, for 4 straight years and see my son over there, and to be in a stadium with 115,000 fans and orderly, just an amazing event. 115,000 fans. I mean, just think about it. A giant football game in the NFL is maybe 70 or 80,000 people. This is 115,000 for a college, the Big House. Just an amazing experience to witness that.
Dean, do me a favor. Can you do a call out to Rhea to make sure she hasn't taken a nap in the last 10 minutes?
Rhea, are you there?
I am. I'm just making coffee.
I had a feeling she was doing something else during this sports segment.
Okay. So I don't know, on the other side of college football, it was, I wanted Ohio State to go undefeated for the last Michigan-Ohio State game. That's the end of the year. But the Penn State at Happy Valley, they upset the Buckeyes last Saturday. So other than that, it was a great weekend.
That's great. Good for you. And congratulations again. 35 happy years.
Happy years,
great.
yeah.
Not easy.
So, Rhea, I know we covered a lot in sports. I do want to test you out. I know in some early shows there were some trivia. when you were asking us some baseball questions with trivia, and you might know the answers already. So I know I want to see if Scott knows this. The most World Series rings by a player and a coach in history.
God.
What player coach has the most World Series rings as a player and a coach in the history of the game of baseball?
This is going to be a terrible guess.
How many rings and who is it?
I'm going to go with terrible guess. Dusty Baker?
Rhea should know this because I think she asked us in an earlier show when we launched something regarding. Rhea, do you know what the answer is?
I have no idea, and I'm so the wrong person to be asking sports questions.
True.
Joe Girardi?
Nope. It was Yogi Berra,
Wow.
the New York
Yogi Berra.
Yankees, the great Hall of Fame catcher. 15 rings
That makes sense.
as a player and a coach.
Wow.
Rhea might know this one. Most World Series won by a team in Major League Baseball. Let's give Rhea a chance. Most World Series wins. Rhea?
Darling, you need to put this into perspective. I don't know what World Series is.
Scott, you better know this
It
one.
starts with a Y, and that's all I'll say. Of course I know it.
27 World Series.
Yes.
How about the National League team that has the most World Series?
St.
wins?
Louis.
You're right. Great, Scott.
Wow.
On that note, I know we've got a bunch of other things to cover. So, Scott, going to turn it over to you to take the lead.
Great. I was thinking about a few subjects that I think are relevant for this week and relevant for years and years to come. And I'd like to discuss it with the panel and the group here today regarding the AT&T and Time Warner proposed merger. It was announced Saturday night by the board. Since then, the stocks have gone down, actually, because of fear that the regulators, which is the Justice Department and FTC, will not approve it. But the chair for AT&T feels very comfortable because he feels this is a vertical integration rather than a horizontal integration, as if, let's say, Time Warner was buying Paramount or Time Warner was buying NBC, then they could monopolize on the content. But I have some other thoughts about it, but I don't want to discuss it all at once. So I wanted to throw it to, let's start with Rhea. And what are your thoughts about this, Rhea?
I don't think it's actually going to make that much difference, really. Rather than me sort of steer, I've got a bit of background on it, going back to the early 1900s. But that aside, let's throw it over to Anthony. Anthony, what do you think about it?
I don't think it should be allowed. I mean, I'm just shocked that these guys even sit around and think it's okay to take two tremendous companies of that size and merge them. But it goes with the whole idea for people that have been following the election closely and for the Trump supporters that listen to his take on the globalism that's being perpetuated by a lot of the powers that be. This falls right in line with that, consolidation of power and falls right in line with the globalist agenda. So it doesn't entirely surprise me that they would do something like this. I just can't believe that nobody's up in arms about it more.
I look at this as, I really don't see anything about this merger that would lower costs for consumers or even increase choices for consumers. I look at it that way. And I also look at it as, a merger of two Goliaths like this. It's going to be interesting to see if this goes through, whether there's a strong disadvantage to competitive companies, along with what I just said. I mean, you have, AT&T ranks first in the nation as the provider of paid TV, and then you've got Time Warner, who's the nation's largest content of companies. So bringing these two together, I don't see anything about this merger that would lower costs for consumers or increase choices for consumers. Well, so, and then obviously the competitive disadvantage that this causes. What's going to happen to Verizon next?
Absolutely. There's actually a study done a while ago by John Quacker, and he's an economist from Northeastern University. And they took the last 1,000 mergers in the past 20 years and taking into account normal factors like input costs, shifts in demand, all your regular economic factors, it shows that 1/3 of those companies had 10% increases, and a whopping 80% of those mergers had 7% increases. And also, the regulators like to say, well, you're gonna have to divestitures. It has been shown that divestitures have had no impact on reducing costs. Another thing is this could be a sign, and Ria gets more into this with the global economy. This could be a sign of a bad economy coming up. The U.S. economy is increasingly dominated by big companies, and I think the trend worries a lot of economists who fear and suggest that the economy is becoming a less dynamically competitive over time. And I think the lesson is mergers could also be a symptom, a sign that other forces, globalization is one, and slower economic growth or increased regulation, are forcing companies to be bigger to survive. So again, this disparity between the rich and the poor, we talk about the bankers, we talk about the consolidation of power, and this might be part of that there's no room for that middle.
Oh, it definitely is part. That's clear as day. I mean, come on.
For the last 2 decades, that there's consolidation in all industries.
Everywhere. Yeah,
Everywhere.
Yeah.
In every business there is. So I just don't, I just don't see how, from a consumer standpoint, I just, as I said before, I don't see how this is going to lower costs or increase choices for consumers.
Well, this is the most shocking thing, and because of the political climate, as I don't know if we all know that right now, Trump and Clinton actually agree on this, that they should not join, and recently the Justice Department and the FTC has been much more circumspect on these mergers. The caveat with the horizontal merger, and AT&T and Time Warner is a vertical merger, but the problem with a vertical merger in these kind of industries are that, okay, you might not be controlling everything, but it's so hard to break into these industries because it requires so much capital. And if you can't break into those industries, therefore you're going to have a price increase. So it really doesn't matter as much horizontal and vertical. It's the fact that you can't get in and you can't create the competition.
Wow.
And they're leveraging each other. Time Warner as the content provider and being able to provide that content to the AT&T customers between the DirecTV platform, which AT&T runs, the broadband provisions that they have, for them to be able to leverage the customer. If they raise the prices, what are they going to do? People are going to. You only have so many choices, right? Like out here, we have Optimum or Direct for satellite, and you have Optimum TV, and then you have Verizon Fios. So, if they decide and to let the merger go through, and they raise prices on some of the services, customers are still limited to where they can go here. And I don't know how it is in other parts of the country. I know down south they have, I think Comcast is the one. Down in Florida.
Comcast and Cox.
So I don't really believe that they're going to do this in the best interest of customers to say we can lower prices. And I actually think all of them, even the competitors, even collude with each other to keep, to make prices go higher, because you don't have one player in the market that is so much lower than any of the others, where it's a no-brainer and people go, oh my God, they're 50% cheaper, let me go to them. No, they're always like neck and neck. It's always like this one's $100 a month, this one's $105 a month with a 10% discount for the first 3 months. And even like Cricket Wireless, who I tried out, I switched over to try out because I had Verizon. Come to find out, and inexpensive, but you do get what you pay for. Service isn't great, but come to find out that they're part of the AT&T network. So at the end of the day, who's benefiting really?
It's like their generic brand, so they get
right. Exactly. So the large corporation is still benefiting from having them integrated to their network, and
Also, I think the last point is that will AT&T / Time Warner allow content to Verizon? And if they do, what would be the prices? And the way they could get around it is reducing the bandwidth of those shows to Verizon. Therefore, people will opt out with their cell phone coverage or internet coverage and go over to AT&T.
Oh, if it's slower, yeah.
Exactly,
Yeah.
and that's one of the issues that they say vertical. What's the problem? Well, there's a problem
There's a
right
problem,
there.
yeah.
Are they going to guarantee it?
Yeah.
There'll be caveats, but if I'm a betting man right now, I say it's 1/3 won't pass, 2/3. No, 1/3 will pass, 2/3 will not pass.
Well, if this goes through, this merger, it's going to be a blockbuster category killer.
Yeah.
And I know the Republican presidential candidate, Donald J. Trump, did mention that if he's elected president, he is going to do everything possible to block this merger.
In his first 100 days.
In his first 100 days. Rhea, what are they saying about this merger over in Europe?
There's no big talk about the merger over here at all. It's largely just in the mainstream in the US largely. I think one of the problems with you get these corporate mergers, I don't know if you could name it. How many mergers do you know of at the top end that were for the people? That it's not for the people. There's an ethic, moral value problem where once upon a day companies were concerned about their workforce and their people. Now it's purely the money. And I think someone raised a good point earlier, because you're about to maybe tip over the edge and into something of a crash or a contraction. These may be pre-done plans to be able to survive it out, really. But I don't believe for 1 second is to create a better deal for you guys watching the TV or whatever it is. I'd be more concerned about the media and that side of things. I feel that nobody's watching the Watchmen, as it were. So I'm looking at it more from it's easier to control the media. Not that it's difficult to control the media anyway, but if you wind it back, it's been going on since the 1900s.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good point. We're talking about price, but, the other part is a consolidation of a few people controlling information. And I know we're talking about now, there's a big information highway with the internet, but, and you could find your news on RT and YouTube and other news sources, but still, most people consume the news by, mainstream. And who wants it to be consolidated by a few big hitters? So it's really not only the price, it's the information that's flowing, and that can control government, and we get into this globalization and the power structures.
Maybe they are preparing to do this merger because they know that their future competitor is going to be Donald J. Trump Cable News. Maybe
And the Dean Blechman show.
Maybe that's why the merger is taking place.
That's interesting. I don't know about that, but it's an interesting thought.
Rhea, if this isn't really big news over in Europe, what's happening today and over the last week as far as Brexit, and also anything that's big newsworthy over in Europe that you can share with us here through the show?
Sure, I'll just round off on the media thing, and then I'll go over to a few things that maybe you haven't heard your end. With the media thing, after the Jekyll Island meeting, when the Fed was formed, you had an entry into the Congress report by Oscar Galloway in 1917, saying he is concerned that J.P. Morgan, Warburg, and Rockefeller are buying up all the media and in those days it was the papers, and they discovered that if they brought 25 papers around the US, they could control the entire media story, which they did. They placed an editor in 25 newspapers, all controlled by Rockefeller, J.P. Morgan, and Warburg, and that's what formed the CFR. So if you want to know who is controlling what you hear and what you see in terms of what comes in from outside the US, not the control within the US, but what comes in from abroad, is called the CFR, the Council of Foreign Relations, which still exists to this day, and they control the media. And that was done since 1917. So that's just winding it back a little bit more, but also very current today. Okay, some news coming out around the world. A couple of things. Iceland, there's been a new party of youngsters in Iceland, because I'm sure you're aware that the PM in Iceland was up for corruption in the Panama Papers. There's this new young party coming in. They've immediately took 30% of the vote. Their main leading angle is nationalism and anti-corruption. And wait for it, they're called the Pirate Party, which I thought was quite interesting. So Iceland's having a bit of a surge from youngsters. They're saying if they get in, they're going to offer Edward Snowden refuge, somewhere to go. They're going to introduce Bitcoin into the economy. So there's a little bit about Iceland that maybe you haven't heard. I don't think you have.
Oh, we'll be bombing them next.
We need an easy target.
Oh my God.
Yeah, and I've got a bit about that. So then over to the Black Sea. I found out today, obviously the Black Sea is something of a hot spot. I'm sure in your news it was all about the Russian fleet going into the Med.
Yep.
Maybe what you didn't hear is about your new destroyers going into the Black Sea yesterday.
Wow.
Did you hear?
I didn't know that.
No. Can you expand on that?
Okay, so was what I found out completely by accident, obviously because of the Crimea. And you have the Black Sea, for those who have the geography to see the Black Sea. It's a very narrow entrance in. Well, it's been congregating. You're on the borders of Russia, etc. And the company Shell had licensed a really expensive research ship along with a research submarine to scan the bottom of the Black Sea. They'd registered it on the ship's log as they were looking for early signs of humanity on the bottom of the Black Sea. But obviously that's highly suspect. The company is Shell, so everybody thinks they're looking for oil, and they've been looking in the Black Sea for some time, months on end kind of thing. Well, as your destroyers came in, they'd finished their project and they'd come out. So there's now nothing else within the Black Sea that could cause a problem if something did go off. So that's quite important news, although it's not reported anywhere. That major research vessel, and it is major, along with the submarine, has just come out of the Black Sea. Amazing. There's nothing in the way there anymore. On the election fixing, which I'm sure you've heard loads of, and that is global news, I might say, is I did a quick poll this morning. I put a question out on 2 social media platforms. They're a younger bunch. I'd say they're from 30 downwards. So they're youngsters, students, all kind of have anonymity, as it were. So you don't really know who's right. And the question I wrote was, US elections, it can't be fixed, can it? Full stop. Or can it? Question mark. And it was only this morning. I've only had 37 come in. And I'll read you 5 out that come back, and none of them were positive, by the way. The first one that I'll read out to you it said, "You're kidding, right?" The next one was just LOL. Then the next one said, "Gov-bank-media all rigged," and then the next one went, "What election?" Which made me chuckle. And another one, I think you know this, but I'm not exactly sure. The FBI guy's wife who received the $500,000 from the Clinton Foundation.
Wow.
Comey's wife did?
Do you know about that?
What?
Yeah, one of the lead guys from the FBI on the Clinton email scandal-y thing. They've audited his wife received $500,000 from the Clinton Foundation.
Rhea, hold up. Where is that being reported from? What source?
There's quite a bit of it, actually.
We're gonna find
If you
right
look
now.
around, it's obviously not in the mainstream, is it? So have it yourselves, it's out there to disprove, but I'm sure Congress are having a look at it, and they're going to check it out to see what's going on. There are names and everything, but I'm sure the story is going to unfold over the next few days.
What's unique here about the show and you being based there in the UK is how fortunate we are to hear things for the first time here on this show that you don't hear in the mainstream.
Well, I try to get the stuff. I kind of have a rough idea what you guys are hearing and seeing, because I can see it myself. And these were just some of the stories that are not coming over your way. And that destroyer thing, that's gone into the Black Sea is a kind of nasty business, you know. So that was just worth mentioning. And on Friday coming, I am going to post, as I've said to Scott and yourself very briefly, there is a global playbook. I'm going to post a 20-minute video of that global playbook so you can see what is going on from a global playbook from the US military point of view and what they're trying to do. So I'm going to post that on Friday, and I'll just leave it on over the weekend for those who are interested. I understand if you're not, but it's really quite a good video and very accurate as to what's going on around the world in terms of, as Scott says, the US might. Back to you, Dean.
And I also want to just to reemphasize and echo to the audience when Rhea said she's going to post on her website. Once again, her website is wickedvid.com. That's wickedvid.com.
Hey,
Yeah,
Anthony has something to say.
I see the article is Wall Street Journal. It's the campaign of FBI official's wife, Clinton ally aided campaign of FBI official's wife, group linked to Virginia Governor Terry McAuliffe. McAuliffe donated nearly $500,000. So I'm assuming that's the one that she's married to.
Yeah.
Anthony, and that article was reported where?
Wall Street Journal.
What date? Does he have
2
a date?
days ago.
Wow.
Yeah, but that's going to be a third degree of separation, as the Clintons always do. Two things I'd like to mention. One, I want to further question Rhea about another news story. I'd like to hear her perspective regarding the rig system. Even Bill O'Reilly said it's unpatriotic, who is a Trump lapdog, basically. It really is a dangerous thing to say. The election. Listen, the system might be rigged, and I wouldn't have a problem with that. It's all about power brokers. But to say that the elections are rigged is the most dangerous to say about a democracy, especially ours. And furthermore, if you know about elections, I don't think any of the polling places are connected to the internet.
Apparently, you didn't see the video with the how to hack the election in 7 minutes with a screwdriver in the back of those machines.
Well, okay.
Back of those voting machines.
But wouldn't you see a carpenter behind there, and wouldn't someone say, okay, there is a, I mean...
Before they even got there to the location, they could be... You got to see the video, how to hack in 7 minutes. They pop the back off with the screwdriver.
I'll be open-minded.
Can we just step away from it a second? I think you've got a point, Scott. I'm not taking that away that, yeah, it's dangerous. But in the court of public opinion, I put out a quick one this morning and you heard what come back. Now, whether it is or whether it isn't, I don't know that. My point of view was that was what those people thought.
Well, would you consider swaying public opinion rigging, right? Because it depends on what our perception of rigging is. If you look at the polls that the media does, where they purposely sample more Democrats, in the one poll where Hillary won by 12 points, coincidentally, they had sampled 12% more Democrats. So, of course, she had won. So if your perception of rigging is swaying public opinion by doing these kind of nefarious things, then we could say, yes, that it's rigged. I saw just a few days ago, they had done a internal poll. It was the Arizona Free Press, so I may not have the name right, but these polls that we've been seeing on the news, on the mainstream news, have been very, very small sample sizes. So maybe they'll sample 100 people, which for a study or a poll, you'll never see a sample size that small. Where this particular internal poll that was done, they sampled 1,000 people from each state. So it was 50,000 people, 50,000 plus people. And then they broke it up evenly amongst Democrats, Republicans, and independents, a third, a third, a third. And what they found was Trump, in that internal poll, had come back 69% to Hillary's 14%. So landslide difference in an internal poll with a large sample size.
So what was the final result of the...
69% Trump, 14% Hillary, the rest independent.
Who was 69%?
Trump.
Okay, but that shows how false it is, because I would bet you $1 million he's not going to get 69% of the vote.
Well, and then you got to factor who's actually going to vote. You know?
Okay, but anyway,
listen, this whole fixing rigged. First of all, our colleague and friend over there in the UK, she's very humble and polite. She uses the word fixing. She doesn't use the word
She has a way with
that
words.
Donald J. Trump has branded. That's called rigging. Okay, and
You're being taken.
listen, as far as Trump saying that the media and it's rigged, listen, I don't know of anyone that's brilliantly out of the gate for the last 8 months, from a marketing perspective, has created more attention on an individual than Donald J. Trump, okay, than the media. So he's been a media hound. He's been a genius at getting the media to cover him. They've done tremendous coverage for him. And as far as what that coverage is, it's all brought on by him, how he acts and behaves and what he has to say. And if he says some interesting things, they're covering him. And if he's saying wild things, they're covering him. So no one, I don't remember, these are unprecedented times. I don't remember anyone, not just politically here, but I don't remember anybody in my lifetime ever getting the type of media coverage that Donald J. Trump is getting here. And whatever that coverage is, I look at it that he's responsible for bringing on that coverage himself. I don't, it's not the media bringing it on.
Right.
They're covering him and reporting what he's saying every day.
Exactly. I find him so hypocritical with the media. I agree. He's probably the master of manipulation with the media when it goes his way and when he gets $2 billion in free marketing advertising, and when the polls are perfect because he's winning. Suddenly, when they scrutinize a little more, the media is rigged. Why wasn't the media rigged during the primaries? Why did they just happen to be rigged now? I mean, it's, if you just use your rational mind, you could see the manipulation, but the manipulation seems to work with the base of the people. But you can't have it both ways.
Rhea, how do you feel about what I just said earlier before Scott?
I think he's, yeah, you've got one hand. I think there's one group of people that feel as though he's speaking the truth. And then you've got the other group of people that think he's a master at what he's doing. So I think there's both sides to the story. How the election will come out, I don't know. But it's interesting. These social media platforms that I did my diddy little poll on sort of thing, just to see what people thought. I want to wait and see if, like, when it's mentioned, Scott's got that immediate pushback, because what if he feels, and that's fine. But I'm looking to find someone, which I haven't found yet, that goes, that is outrageous to even mention it. And I haven't come across that person yet. So for me personally, outside of this show, I'm looking to wait. I haven't checked this afternoon to see if that person comes up and says that's just shocking, you know, that people even think that. So from my point of view, I mean, the polls, what are the polls? I mean, I don't listen to the polls personally. I just don't. I mean, I don't think it's reflective. I mean, you've got this massive silent vote where someone would vote for somebody but would never tell anybody. Mm-hmm. So who knows? I don't know what's going on. But the one thing I will say is that democracy is doing its thing, because if you didn't have a democracy back in the day, there would have been a war. There would have been a civil war. Yeah. So
yeah.
Really, isn't it?
So November 9th, are we waking up to a headline just like President Harry Truman?
Do we find out the next day?
Huh?
Yeah, well, I think we're going to find out at 9:01.
Scott, do we wake up like a Harry Truman?
Yeah,
or what?
and they have to reprint the paper.
No,
2E1 or whatever.
No, do we really? Is it the next day that they tally it and we find out?
No,
it takes a few days, right?
They have projections, unless it's up to one state and a few hundred votes, like Gore Bush. So we're going to know.
Well, there was a perfect example of Gore Bush of what happened.
Yeah,
you know,
it could.
And to Rhea, to your point, I know you said that the survey was to a smaller, not a smaller, the younger generation, like under 30. And I think the reason why, being part of that generation, I think the reason why you're getting the responses that you're getting is because our generation, growing up with technology and knowing how easy it is to hack things, and to get into systems that you're not supposed to get into, and just the possibilities that exist, growing up and seeing so much change, so many changes, cures for different kinds of medications, cures for diseases, technological advancements. I mean, we went from having you guys growing up with record players to having a phone phone in our pocket that's half the size of our palm of our hand that can hold 10,000 songs on it. So, when you're growing up with these kind of advancements happening around you at lightning fast speed, I think you become much more open-minded to the possibilities. And rather than someone like my grandfather, if he was still alive, God rest his soul, would say, "Oh, are you crazy? Get out of here. That could never happen." Or, "What are you smoking, kid?" Where our generation is very, very just open-minded to these possibilities, where we can say, you know what, I think that actually could happen. Maybe it won't, maybe it will, but it's very possible. And I think that's why you're getting that kind of feedback.
I think that he's manipulating to such an extent that they could cause a problem with the democracy, because he's conflating two things. One, he's saying, the polls don't matter, okay? Well, come on, he's talking on both sides of his mouth. The polls matter to him like no one else, and all he talked about were the polls when he was winning. When he's losing, it's not. So that's transparent. Now let's get to the election is rigged. Who says that before the election? The person that says that is always the person who thinks is going to lose. So now let's say he wins. What are the chances that he said it was rigged? Let's be honest. So this is to cover his ego, to have a soft landing, to go into, and there's been reports about how everything is winning. It was just on a lot of the mainstream media. He always has to be a winner. So he's whining now so he could say, well, I didn't really lose. It was rigged. I'm still a winner now. Join Trump TV.
Hey, listen, there is the last 2 days, besides rigged or fixed, the big topic right now with the election is Obamacare. I mean, the past 2 days,
Yeah, you're right.
It's been flooded
There you
with
go. Perfect example of-
Obamacare.
And if he didn't butcher the narrative, that would be huge right now, and he could really gain points. But he's right now having a ribbon cutting ceremony at his new Washington fancy schmancy hotel. I'm sure the blue collar workers in West Virginia are really looking forward to going there.
All I know is Sharon last night told me again that our premiums are going significantly up.
Yeah, 25%. I
Yep.
got the letter. It's
Yep.
insane.
Going significantly up.
25%.
You got it
Keep-
ready?
we-
Because the open enrollment starts in 6 days. I was listening to this. Your friend Smirkanish this morning.
We keep paying more insurance premiums, and we keep getting less.
Yep.
That's what's happening.
One of the
So-
theories I heard today is that they really have to find a way to get the pool of 21 to 35-year-old healthy people more involved. That was the model. So obviously the first people that signed in were the sick.
It was the model, but it didn't work out that way.
Okay,
so they need to go back to
let's
what
fix it.
worked.
So let's fix it. No,
Yeah, put it back to how you had it.
It was never good. It was never good. So this was trying to fix it. I agree. It probably didn't fix it, but we can't. I don't think we should agree that the old model was good. I paid hundreds of thousands of dollars to my employee for healthcare. It's ridiculous. The share of GDP to healthcare in the United States is 17.5%. In the rest of the world, it's 12%, and a lot of them have single payer. It just doesn't work. I'm just, I don't know what the answer is. I'm not smart enough. Obamacare is not, it has to be tweaked, Anthony.
If they can take money from people for Social Security to provide from older people, we know that system is flawed. But if you look at all the money that's spent, I don't want to pick on Hillary, but if you look at the, billions of dollars that went to advance certain commercial causes, uranium and things like that, I think people that are playing in that level, goes back to my kind of liberal communist statement that I made about over the 100 million mark about giving back some money. I think people that are ultra wealthy, they should have to contribute a certain percentage to a fund that would have to cover people that are very, very sick. Not when you go to the doctor, you need antibiotics, or people that have cancer that don't have insurance, or people that have, seriously debilitating diseases. That would fix it, because you have a very small portion of let's say this country, the top 1% that has
all that
everything.
Wealth. Exactly.
Billions and billions of dollars. You don't need that much money. You don't. After you have everything, why do you need that much? So there should be a mandatory tax.
So why are they so against it? What's the reason if it doesn't matter?
Let's go over to Rhea. Give her a chance on this subject.
That's a
Rhea,
good point, Anthony.
Rhea, as I told you, it's really the past 2-3 days. Trump really pounding this Obamacare topic right now. Do you have an opinion?
Yeah, I probably do. I mean, the model is a disaster. It didn't work out, and it's so different in the UK, isn't it? Although it's fast changing in the UK from the National Health Service.
How is it for you guys? What is it? What is your system?
Isn't it single payer out there?
No, it's what you do when you take a job, say what they call PAYE. You pay your tax. That the employer pays your tax. A portion of that automatically goes into Social Security. So the majority of medical care is free, but you still have these huge waiting lists as the population goes up exponentially with people coming in, da 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 da. It's just going up a lot. So it's really different from the US. You play private, and if you don't pay, you get barely nothing. Here, if you become a registered citizen, as it were, of Great Britain, you get free healthcare, although you're going to wait quite a while to do it. There are some queuing techniques that you can jump the queue by going private. So you pay a small amount, well, not a small amount, 100, 200 pounds maybe, and you can jump the queue to get the scene quicker. So it's really different from the Obamacare. But just changing the thing about one thing I wanted to bring up with you guys, which is kind of completely different, is I had this phrase going through my mind, which is who's watching the Watchmen? Your Congress, when all this stuff goes in, so this is about Congress, when all this stuff that doesn't work out goes in front of Congress, what exactly are they doing? Because they can't change anything, can they? I thought they were watching the Watchmen. I thought that was the whole idea of the system, that if something's a bit crooked, it goes in front of Congress. But it turns out they can't actually do anything, can they? Is that right?
Well, the president, I think, can have final say, right? They can veto him, and then he could also, the word's not veto, but he could stop their bills.
I think Scott is. I think Scott is the authority and the expert a little bit more than anybody on the Constitution. So Scott, go ahead.
I appreciate that, but I'm not up there quite as much as you said. But thank you for that. I think when you have these special subcommittees, they send recommendations. Let's say Jim Comey is in front of the Homeland Security, a special committee, or the FTC chairman or the IRS, and they grill that person. They'll have a vote. It will be partisan. Just remember that. So now we have the politics involved. So that's the toughest thing. But let's say we don't have the politics involved. What would normally happen is there would be a vote and a recommendation, and then it goes to the full House and the full Senate. And if they pass that, then it will go to the desk of the president, and he would sign the bill. And that's where the changes would be made in those departments within the government.
But he could stop that bill and not sign it, right?
And Congress could not take it up on the floor because it's all politics. But that, I think what Rhea was saying, what's the watchdog? There is a watchdog, but then there's so much politics at play. And that's the problem. There's normally,
It's an ineffective watchdog.
Yes, exactly, because they're not neutral bodies that are going to be changing it. There are political bodies that are changing it, that have their own self-interest and their own lobbyists buying them.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
It's like with Comey and stuff. Comey took the decision not to prosecute, so it didn't even get to Congress, sort of thing. Well, it got to Congress to be heard, but no changes were made because a private body, in this case the FBI, could make the decision whether to prosecute or not. They were sort of judge and jury.
Well, yeah, I mean, in the future they can make some new laws, but no one's going to change a law. Comey is a Republican, first of all, and before this announcement, he was probably the most respected person in government. So you can't, it's just ridiculous to go from the most respected person in government to the guy's crooked and he's corrupt.
Well, it shows you how scared he is of her, because I heard also on different talk shows that you have to remember she's very, very powerful. People forget.
Yeah.
And apparently she's got the dirt on everybody. And if they would have taken her down, she would have taken down all of them. She's got the files on all of them.
Listen,
ruined them.
Unless you guys want to stay on this topic and continue, I'd like to switch gears and go back to where we started on this show with Scott's MacBook and his computer problems, his hemorrhaging, freaking out.
Was that the hemorrhoids? I don't know.
No,
Hemorrhoids.
Wasn't the hemorrhoids, but
hemorrhaging.
I think Anthony's still convinced that you were looking at porn.
And I
hey, listen, we all do it.
But because of your Apple Mac...
Actually, I wore this shirt in honor of you today, Scott.
But because of your Apple Mac...
You came in with a smile also, Anthony, that I haven't seen in a while, just by the way.
Because of your Apple and Mac problems, I just want to just reach out to you, your feelings and anything you'd like to discuss on the topic of spam.
Not really.
No?
No.
Okay.
No.
Okay. I thought you'd maybe want to talk about that.
No, I really don't get spam, and it didn't show spam. I have no idea what the problem is. But there is something I'd like to discuss is something that Rhea might know about. She's talking about the news, and can you tell us, and I know I'm putting you on the spot, but can you tell us about the election in Spain? Why don't you explain that? Why?
Yeah, you got to preface that how that even came up because
Because no one knows why we're laughing. Well, okay, I'll say it. I wrote down while
Scott has a bad habit of passing notes as we're doing live shows. So go ahead, Scott.
So I wrote a Spain, and to give it to Dean to bring it back to Rhea.
He wrote it backwards.
And no, you're reading it backwards. You're supposed to turn the paper. So he thought I was talking about spam. I said, I don't know what you're talking about.
That sounds like the Saturday night dinner story with Sharon and her friend J Lo.
Right, the open table or the reservation.
They both wrote text messages to each other, and J Lo didn't read Sharon's text correctly.
Okay, so I'm going to give you a 2 for Rhea. What do you think about spam, which we weren't supposed to talk about? But more importantly, do you have anything to add with the Spanish elections? And I think the socialists are giving up the power. I've heard a little bit about it.
I hope people continue to write on YouTube. There's been a few comments already that they love the chemistry of us on the show. So
that was too much.
I hope after this, with Spain and spam.
Am I
Anthony, didn't you think that was spam?
I'm sending Rhea a picture. I'm Skyping it to Rhea so she can see that looks like spam.
This show is going to be renamed. We got to name it. Let's talk about Scott and let's get under his skin a little bit. I could see it looks like I wrote it fast, and my handwriting could look like Swahili at times. Rhea,
when the show's on video,
just got the text from Dean. Go to front door. Long story. Because I normally walk through the garage.
All right, Rhea, can you please get me out of this now?
No, I'm still reeling from Trump porn.
We've seen that with 11 women. Anyway, and the Billy Bush. But anyway, anything about Spain, about the election, or is it something that we don't hear a lot about? Is it something brewing in the UK or in the EU?
That'll beep.
Well, after that, I'm speechless.
Boy, your beautiful girlfriend, Shoshana, you're going to have some questions to answer when you get home.
God.
Huh, Scott?
I'm leaving the room when it goes on. Rhea, please help me out with Spain, please. Rhea, Google it. Do something. Rhea, are you still there?
I am still here. I'm just laughing at you downloading naked Trump. That's shocking. Anyway. Right, okay. Here's personal, and I know you're a bit neurotic, so each their own. Right, so moving on. Spain, no, there's nothing about Spain. Each one of these countries don't really exist in their own right. They call them member states now. They don't really have their own idea. Well, they kind of do to the people, but to the EU, they're just like the EU. They're all part of the EU. They now know if you try to leave the EU, they're going to hold a gun to your head, which is what's going on with the UK.
I saw that.
Yeah, great to be part of the gang, right? But if you try to leave, it's like mafioso style. It's more about Italy, to be honest, because they've got a big election coming up. Nationalism is growing. It's the same story, Scott, really. Rather than Spain specific, it is nationalism is growing in a big way. And they're scared to death of it, but these people owe loads of money to the ECB. So Spain is kind of, other than people, expats going to live there, which are returning back quite quickly, Spain is kind of void, if you like.
On the issue of globalism, Rhea, isn't there a situation there where you have ex-bankers being put into power, ex-Goldman guys and things being put into government, particularly in Italy and Spain? I thought I had heard that. Is that still happening, or?
Well, he's gone into JP Morgan, hasn't he?
Oh, is that what happened? Excuse me.
Yeah, no, he was an Italian banker, really trustworthy, and then he was in the ECB. He was part of the unelected, which is what the European Commission's about. That them guys at the top, how did they get the gig? Good question.
Right.
And then he left the ECB, central bank, and ended up at, I think it was it JP Morgan? It's one of your big banks over that end. And there was a bit of an uproar, but I've not really heard anything. But they're all going from government to banking to, it's kind of standard, isn't it?
The revolving door, as you said last time.
Yeah, I got just a tangent of that question. Is that the European Union's version of pay to play, like they're talking about Clinton, where you pay to get into the EU where they're unelected? Would that be the analogy?
Well, the idea being, like the United States, it's the United States of Europe was drawn up after World War II, and some even say they were talking about it at Jekyll Island when they formed the Federal Reserve. And the idea being that it started out not as the European Union, they called it the single market. It was purely trade, rather like the TPP and all that kind of thing.
Right.
And then before you know it, in 2016, they're calling it the EU, and they're on about forming their own army, and they're trying to form the United States of Europe, and it's not going very well at all because of the rise of what people call either isolationism. They don't call it nationalism. And what was the other one? There was another one, some other sort of negative term for a country that goes, do you know what, this isn't working. We just want our identity back, which is what England have done, but haven't yet proceeded. So they're saying they're going to trigger Article 50 by the end of March in England.
I think you were, to correct me if I'm wrong, were you looking for the word sovereignty as well as nationalism/isolationism? They want sovereignty back?
Popularism. That's what I was looking for.
Oh, okay.
They call it popularism because it's popular,
right,
that people want their own identity back. But like Greece, I mean, if you ever listened to the who was the financial director of the Greek government, he cut it because he just saw through what it is. You join the ECB or join the European Union, England pays about 350 million a week into this massive bureaucracy where there's over 10,000 executives earning more than the British PM. To write legislation on straight bananas and stuff like that. God. And yeah, no, it's huge. It's a huge bureaucracy thing. Greece failed, and then they got a handout for a certain amount of control. So it's just each one of the member states loses control over their money, and the money becomes run privately, which is the same as the Federal Reserve. So it's going down the same route as the states, guys.
Interesting. So is there a way to decompartmentalize and break that up a little bit rather than being this behemoth to just having, I don't know, you still have your sovereignty and just work on trade rather than military? Is there a middle ground that might work so it's not like the United States, but since there's so many countries in Europe, they could gain some benefits, like a modification? Do you see anything like that?
No, not at all. It basically works. If you want to join, you get to trade with the member states, which is 28, 27 if the UK leave. That is saying they'll trigger that at the end of March. But you pay in, and then you send your Minister of Foreign Affairs into the European Union. What you see on the TV with, like, you've got a representative from England, a representative from Italy, whoever's a member state. And they debate, and you got Jean-Claude Juncker, who's your top dog that is not elected by the people. I think there's about 12 people that sit at the top that are not democratically elected. And that guy that you brought up, Anthony, I can't think of his name, Barocos or something like that. He's the one that went from Italy banking to on the board of the EU, now is over to one of the big banks in the US.
Yeah.
This is not a democracy. The EU isn't a democracy.
Yeah. So can't the answer be scrap the EU and just have free trade? Make believe, France and Germany is like Texas and Oklahoma. Everyone has free trade partnership like NAFTA and things like that. But you retain your own currency and your own sovereignty. Can't that be a system that would work? Why did you tilt all the way to the other side with unelected people and possibly a military? Isn't that a possible answer?
Well, it is a possible model to move forward with, but that's not the model that the EU wants. They want it their way or the highway, as it were. So that's the way it works. That's what it is when you joined in. I think we joined in the 70s or something into a single trade market. But that's what trade deals are. Trade deals are about barriers. It's not about free movement. It's about when you did NAFTA, you did that deal with the Chinese, which was all good at the time. And I think it was Bush saying how good it is. All the jobs got, all the techniques and jobs got shipped out, flyover country in the US over to China. Then
True.
one guy from the factory got flown over there to show them how to do it. And all the jobs have gone.
That's a good point. Yep.
Wow, wow.
There's no
Great
good answers.
stuff.
Yeah, it's just, I don't know what the answers are. We talk about them and we bring them up. It's for you to decide, basically. It's really good stuff.
Definitely.
This is great.
Great conversation, Scott and Rhea.
You need to have, as I said to you the other day, the face of America is completely non-representative of the people of America. And that's no good. Like if you spoke to, say, a committee or a council from Hawaii, you will feel that they represent the people, that they are the people, where our guys, they're not the people. They're sort of part of something else.
The boys club.
Well, yeah, whatever you want to call it, but they're not the people, as it were. And until you get trust in that, as I said to you, without the trust, it's going nowhere fast.
I think human nature, if we rewinded 250 years to our founding fathers, and when there was a hell of a lot less people in the country and the communities put that one person in charge as a senator or a congressman, the very, very first ones, I think it's human nature to get enthralled and wrapped up in having this sense of power where then you start to do things for your own self-interest. And it's just grown and compounded over the last 250 years since our country has been born. So in a way, you can't blame them for being out for themselves and not really being for the people. And on the other side of that, I guess the only way to fix it is to remove any representatives of the people, quote unquote, and just go to a popular vote on everything, every issue.
Well, I think that there's two easy fixes that both Republicans and Democrats should all agree upon. And it's a start, but it's a no-brainer. Listen, I'm for the Second Amendment, but no, I don't want to see an Uzi or Sherman one tank outside my house. Let's have reasonable gun laws. But there's another point about term limits. This is a no-brainer. Have no more than 6 years. All they're doing is they're playing politics to get and to work with the lobbyists, and instead of really working, they're fundraising for their next election as a lifetime job. Why can't you just have term limits? We have it for the president. This should be a bipartisan thing. I think a lot of this would be cleaned up, really. And it's a start, but we can't even start.
Yeah.
Wow. Great stuff. Great stuff. Scott, do you have anything else that you'd like to bring up?
Yes, I'm going to be speaking to fifth level Apple techs tonight between 9:30 and 10 o'clock.
How high does it go?
Tim Cook is next on the list.
Anthony, anything that you'd like to talk about?
Oh, I won't even get into it.
Yes, he's in a great mood today. That's what matters.
We'll see if I'll let you know after tomorrow.
Let's go over to Rhea. Rhea, anything else that you'd like to bring up on the show?
No, not really. I'm just looking down this list of little notes that I did because you guys were late. That is, I'm sure you know this, but maybe you don't, that Julian Assange's mentor was found dead.
What?
Wow.
I heard that.
Wow.
I heard, that was a few days ago, wasn't that, Rhea?
Yeah, a couple of days ago.
I actually heard that story.
Wow, that's another thing I haven't heard
I got
yet.
that. I don't know where I got that from. Maybe RT or something?
Google alert. Google alert.
Yeah.
Scott, you don't remember where
Gavin
you
McFadden
heard
dies.
I don't remember where I heard it, but when she said it, I'm completely aware of the story.
that? Wow.
Yeah, so he's
Dead
gone
at
the way of
76?
Julian Assange's lawyer as well.
Oh, that was a takeout. There's no doubt about
Well,
it.
76 years old, but does it say? Does it say what?
It's too coincidental. It's 2 weeks before the election.
And the first
No,
article
so that's
on here.
me, Dean. That's me. Back to you.
Wow, that's breaking news. That's big. I really don't have anything else. I thought it was a great show. Maybe a lot of me in the beginning, but I like to talk about my life and the things that have happened today and yesterday and over the weekend. So it was thanks for having your patience today. But I think we had a lot of laughs about it along the way.
Yes, I'm at my expense. And you're all welcome. Thank you, Rhea, Dean, Anthony. Appreciate that.
But as always, you guys were great today. It was a lot of fun and very informative as we moved on. And I'd like to thank you all again. Appreciate it. So on that note, I'd like to hear from all our listeners. Listeners can reach out to us with the free text number for U.S. residents at 631-372-8849. That's 631-372-8849. We'd like to hear from all of you. Include your name and location, and we will mention you on the show. Please don't forget to like us on Facebook and to hit the subscribe button on the show's YouTube channel. If you would like to leave a comment, use the box below. If you'd like to share your story, ideas, and be a guest on the show, go to deanblechman.com and email me. I would like to thank all my listeners for being with us today. From all of us at The Dean Blechman Show, have a great day.
You've been listening to The Dean Blechman Show, live from Long Island, New York. From all of us here, we'd like to thank you for tuning in. We look forward to hearing your comments via Facebook, Twitter, Skype, and email. And don't forget, you can visit the webpage anytime for the up-and-coming guest list. From all of us here, have a good evening.